Okay, good to go.
Good morning and welcome to the second event of the 10th Annual Symposium of the Humanities Program at Utah Valley University. We thought we were going to have to cancel our symposium this year because of the virus, but when we found that the Utah Museum of Contemporary Art was mounting a retrospective show of Alex Caldiero's work, we thought we could do a parallel symposium and exhibition. Alex Caldiero is our senior artist in residence in the humanities program. Our humanities major and minor are interdisciplinary works, interdisciplinary major, minor, that work across the borders of traditional art history or painting or photography or dance or music departments. We work in those intersections. Alex Caldiero was born in Sicily. His family emigrated to Brooklyn when he was 9 years old, which places him in a lifetime between two languages. And one of the things I've always liked best about his work is his sensitivity to that intersection. I've watched performances of Alex Caldiero for 3 decades. They've been important events in my life. I never walk away from a performance without new ideas, without new questions in my head, without new life in my body. Alex is going to perform today. I'm always interested in the context of his performances, and I just want to give you a couple of quick examples. Richard Castellanetz, one of the most interesting thinkers about language and many other things of this last century, produced a book called Text, Sound Texts. He's collected scores for performances, scores for visual texts that are made to be turned into sound. And in this book, he's got John Cage and Allen Ginsberg and Philip Glass and Gertrude Stein and Jack Kerouac and many, many other really important speakers, writers, sound poets, including Alex Caldiero. I want to read you an epigraph from this book. It's from the great Dada poet Hugo Ball. This is from Flight Out of Time, 1927. In these phonetic poems, we totally renounce the language that journalism has abused and corrupted. We must return to the innermost alchemy of the word. We must even give up the word too, to keep for poetry its last and holiest refuge. Alex calls himself a sonosopher. 2 recent books with Elit Press, Andy Hoffman was our guest yesterday, play with that word. The new book is Personal Effects, and the book before that is Sono Suono. Alex was telling me this morning that Sono Suono has several meanings, kind of puns, but the one I'm just going to mention is sono, you can see the sound, and then I am. There's a way that Alex is sound. If you look on our website, you probably got to this live stream through our website, thesonosopher.com. If you look under performances, you can find a performance of one of my favorite works of his called This Is Not It. Take a look at that. He starts with the words, this is not it. There's a moment he's halfway in where he slips into sound that is no longer the words, and then he slips back into the words. So I'm looking forward to this performance this morning, and I give you Alex Caldiero.
Quando era caruso, scavava fossi e faceva finta d'essere morto. When I was a boy, I dug holes and made believe I was dead. Then, dying was a game, and it felt good to play with the earth, and it felt good to climb an olive tree and see our vineyard and our house with the tile roof, and further out, the men digging. And I thought I knew why they were there and what they did. Now, I look at my smooth hands and think of the calloused hands of the men in my town who dig holes to bury their sorrows in. But the earth doesn't want sorrows and changes them into the seeds of flowers. I see that house empty in that town, a continuity broken, a part of myself irreparable. I imagine the house, and then the street, and then the whole town empty of us. My family, who had lived there for generations, gone because of death or emigration. Emptiness takes hold, a darkness for which there is no sun. The iridologist leaned forward and looked deep into my eyes. "Your eyes are not really brown," she said. "Your eyes are blue." Then she explained, "This is because your system is clogged. Only by cleaning out your system will your eyes shine with their true color, which, as I said before, is not brown, but blue." I ran from my death. I built walls between me and my death. I went through doors, bolted them behind me. I wanted to put distance between me and my death. I barred one door after another. I went down corridors, turning, dashing into one room and then another. And when I had locked the final door behind me, and when I had entered the last room, and when I had stopped running, there was my death waiting for me, all the while sitting on an easy chair. It looked at me and said, "Just testing, just testing." Something's happening to my head that the rest of my body doesn't like. The head wants to become its own. The rest of the body is resentful and sends messengers of pain. But the head is stubborn. More messengers are sent. Messengers of pain come and go, and still the head doesn't lose ground or hope. It wants to cause its own dreams. It wants to not think or feel what the hands or the belly think or feel. It wants to let go and go its own way. Messengers of pain, faces covered with dark cloths, walk into the room and hand over their missives, then deliver their warnings verbally, just the same. Messengers of pain come in without knocking. They sit uninvited and make themselves at home. When asked to leave, they shake their heads, then lift their gloved hands and hold them out like panhandlers from another world. What do you want from me? Is it money? Is it breath? Is it my mind? Or what? Messengers of pain get up, walk toward me, and indicate I should sit down. I do, and they stand in a circle about me. Each one puts forth one hand, still gloved. I am set apart for suffering. Who are you? Are those your faces? How do you manage to speak without mouths? The body begins to think the head is dead weight. The body begins to think it wants the head to go away. The body begins to move and the head follows. The head knows it is not wanted. The head got the message, but it is so attached it can't let go. It wants to, but it can't let go. Now I know who you are. Now I remember your name. Your hands have no fingers, and your faces no mouths. I know who you are. I remember your name. Don't come any closer. Don't change the way you stand. I know where you come from. I know what you want. You just can't trust anyone and let them live in peace. I know who you are. I know where you're going. I've seen your tracks before. I know who you are. Your name is a scar. Your face is a wound. Your message is your message is your song. You cannot talk, but you sure can sing. You cannot walk, but you sure can run. You are the night lit by the sun. You are the night lit by the sun. No doubt about it. no use to complain. You are the messenger, your message is pain. No doubt about it now, no use crying aloud. You're the beautiful body, enveloped in a shroud. No sense continuing what cannot end. No sense straightening what cannot bend. No doubt about it, I know your name. I wanna shout it and expose your game. But something's gone wrong. Instead of talking, I'm singing a song. And when I try to tell it, enunciate and yell it, I start to sing, and I don't say a thing. I start to sing, and I don't say a thing. I start to sing, and I don't say a thing. Schooling the spirit. Put your hand out, she said. Hold out your hand, she said. Put your hand out, she said. Hold your hand out, she said, and swung down on the knuckles with the edge of her ruler. And it must have been with all her might, because it felt like a knife cut. It must have been with all her might, because the knuckles got numb, and the pain was not real. Hold out your hand, she said. Hold your hand out, she said. Hold out your hand, she said. Hold it out, she said, and swung down with the edge of the ruler. And it must have been more than the second time. And it must have been no more than the 100th time. And it must have been painful because I didn't know where I was, nor could I see through the tears. And it must have been unbearable because I cried. And it must have been cruel because my forehead and my eyebrows began to form a frown, which didn't help the situation much, because she said, "Stop frowning and hold out your hand." She said, "Stop frowning and keep your hand out." She said, "Stop frowning, stop frowning." She said, "Stop your frowning." And I would have stopped even my breathing. And I would have stopped even crying, and I would have certainly stopped frowning, only I didn't understand what frowning was, only that I should stop. And I would have certainly stopped if it wasn't for the fact that I didn't speak English very well, and the word frowning was not yet in my vocabulary. Otherwise, I certainly would have stopped, because she said to stop frowning and hold out my hand and keep them out. And she swung down with the edge of the ruler until I thought I saw blood, but it wasn't blood. It was just the color of pain. And then she stopped. After what must have been a lifetime, she stopped, because I guess I stopped frowning. She stopped, and I stopped thinking and feeling, and now I remember and frown. There's an extra pair of shoes in my closet, and I don't know who they belong to. I tried them on and they don't fit. Also, the style and color are all wrong. These are definitely not my shoes. I ask everyone in the house, but nobody knows. I go to my neighbors door to door and let them try them on, all the while fearful of the stepsisters who will forever insist on one more try. This is the situation. The cats are inside, the dogs are outside, too old to learn to live together. We keep them separate, or all hell would break loose. If you ask what efforts have been made to teach them about each other or introduce them to each other, we'd have to say none. This is the scene. The cats and dogs are kept apart with no idea of cohabitation. I have arrived. I will arrive. We have arrived. We will arrive at this as the only solution. This is the way things are. Dogs outside, cats inside, vigilant over the doors, that these worlds may never collide. You speak differently when you read than when you talk. Words move your lips in ways that defy the logic and rhythm you are used to. I clearly remember not being able to read my native language. How the language learned to speak in school mysteriously became the one I speak every day. You speak differently when you need than when you got. Words move your lips in ways that defy the head and heart that you were born with. I clearly remember not being able to name my wants and desires. How the language I learned to speak to others mysteriously became the one I speak in my dreams. You speak differently when you talk than when you listen. Words move your lips in ways that disconnect your tongue and mouth from your breathing. I clearly remember not being able to give meaning to what I was saying. How the language I learned to speak in my head mysteriously became the one I whisper in my room. You speak differently when you think than when you know. Words move your lips in ways that resist thought and reason and then abandon you. I clearly remember not being able to recall what was already on my mind. How the language I learned to speak in childhood mysteriously became the one I speak only to the dead. You speak differently to your own body than to the body next to you. Words move your lips in ways that are unrecognizable when you see them in the mirror. I clearly remember reaching out to reach within. How the language I learned to speak in secret mysteriously became my own scream. That I have to own up to every part. That nothing is isolate. That nothing is absent. that there is no such thing as such a thing, that the end is at the very beginning, that the scrap is precious, that it's every bit as cold as it is hot, that the marrow is as much on the surface as it is at the center of each and every bone, that the centers do hold and hold, that the centers fall apart even as they hold, that it's nothing to talk about, that it's too late to talk about, that it's everything you will or can talk about, that the superficial is pretty deep, that you break a rule by keeping the exception, that back and forth move neither back nor forth, that's that, that is that too, that's that is that, that's that, that's that is that is that is, that's Imaginary conversation with William Burroughs. William Burroughs. We must find out what words are and how they function. They become images when written down, but images of words repeated in the mind and not of the image of the thing itself. Caldiero. What would an image of the thing itself look like? It would be an unique image with no repeating parts and no extraneous portions. It would be a monad. It would be the reverse of a viral structure whose sole purpose is to replicate itself aimlessly, endlessly, to be parasitic, which is the antithesis of the creative. Is that really what you would say? This or something similar? But that doesn't mean that your response would be as viral nature in that it can have duplicates and be approximate and repetitive. Not at all. To be repetitive is not necessarily the same as being duplicative. The repetitive is creative in that it never really is repeating the thing exactly. The variations and transmutations of a basic form, like passages from Mozart, while duplication has to do with the clone, with a would-be or wannabe sameness that purposely eliminates variables until it would approximate as much as possible one thing after another, every time it happens. This conversation, for example, is generative. An example of a duplicative conversation would be a brainwashing session. A drop of water falls invariably on the very same spot. The same words repeated with an unflinching tone produce an hypnotic haze of control. So one way of escaping future control over our freedoms is to stay in touch with parts of our psyche that are creatively making variables and generating living unpredictabilities. Yes, dream on, be surprised, stay nervous. Eating bread and wine is noble. Eating bread and cheese is comical. Eating bread and grapes is sensuous. Eating bread and sauce is colorful. Eating bread and apples is chic. Eating bread and nuts is noisy. Eating bread and oranges is resourceful. Eating bread by itself is most ancient. Oh, found the eye in the big fluff. Flowers are amazing. Water, 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 and water, and circles, and water, and water, and water. And water, 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 and water, and then water, in water, water, and water, and water, 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 and water, water, and water, and water, and water, and water, and water, and then water, and water, and water, and water, and water, and water, and water, 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 and then water, and water, and then water, water, and then water, water, and water, and water, and water, and then water, water, and then water, water, and then water, and water, and water, and then water, and water, and then water, 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 going, 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 go go going, going, go go going, go 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 going, go go going, 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 go 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 going, 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 go go going, go 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 going, 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 go go going, going, go 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 going, 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 go 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 going, 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 go go going, 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 time, 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 in time, 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 in time, 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 in time, 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 it time, 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 tie time, 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 me time, 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 time. Oh, 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 ha, ha, oh, oh, ah, oh, 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 Every week, I read my horoscope, and every time it is absolutely correct. Everything comes out. Even my fortune cookie always holds some pertinent message. Have I become so predictable? When I first saw fingers, I said, I'll take 10 of those. Hairs were another matter. Because I couldn't count them, I just took as many as I could carry. In this way, I gradually put my body together. When I finished, I knew I was finished by how long I could touch my eyeballs without having to blink. Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! If you die while you are asleep, you could go on dreaming forever. Wake up! It was taken from us so long ago we can't remember what it is. But there is no doubt it was taken from us, and the mind is quick to invent something for it. Question: how would Pinocchio have ended up if Jiminy Cricket had been a spider? This morning, I rode my bicycle to work. It was cool and pleasant. I sure am learning a lot about computers and their functions. I took the kids shopping for a present for Grandma. They couldn't agree on a present, so we went home empty-handed. I sure am learning a lot about computers and their functions. This evening, my son Isaac announced that one of his teeth is loose. He wouldn't stop moving it back and forth until he pulled it out. I sure am learning a lot about computers and their functions. Today it rained. People ran indoors, but I just walked as usual. I sure am learning a lot about computers and their functions. Some people pick their noses. Some people pick their ears. I pick my belly button and remove the ancient lint, careful not to unfasten the knot that unravels all. In a world somewhere where there's no repetitions and every action is performed only once, the first and last time, what would life be like in such a world? In a world where there's no repetitions and every action is performed only once, the first and last time, what would life be like in such a world? In a world where there's no repetitions and every action is performed only once, the first and last time, what would life be like? In a world where there's no repetitions and actions performed only once, what would this and last time, what would life be like? In a world that is the yesik the sa taka sa ta pa. Foam and sand, foam and sand, foam and sand, foam and sand, blood foam and sand, foam and sand, foam and sand, foam and sand, vein foam and sand, foam and sand, foam and sand, foam and sand, sperm foam and sand, foam and sand, foam and sand, foam and sand, footprint foam and sand, foam and sand, foam and sand, sun foam and sand, foam and sand, foam and sand, moon foam and sand, foam and sand, sun foam and sand, crescent foam and horns sand, foam and sand, foam and sand, foam and sand, foam and sand, sun foam and sand, 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 slither foam and sand, foam and sand, foam and sand, foam and sand, fall foam and sand, foam and sand, foam and sand, slither foam and sand, 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 fall foam and sand, foam and sand, foam and sand, leaf go foam and sand, 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 bud foam and sand, foam and sand, farm flower, sand and dance sand, foam and sand, foam and sand, foam and sand, green foam and civil sand, foam and sand, foam and stones like sand, foam and sand, foam and sand, foam and sand, foam and sand, foam, foam and sand, foam and sand, foam and sand, foam, foam and sand, foam and sand, sand, foam and sand, foam and stone, crystal, sand, foam and sand, foam, foam and sand, foam and sand, foam and sand, foam, foam and sand, foam and sand, sand, foam and sand, foam and foam, crystal, sand, foam and sand, foam and sand, glass foam and sand, foam and sand, foam and sand. Diamond foam and sand. Foam and sand. Foam and sand. Precious ice foam and light sand. Foam, light and white sand. Foam, foam and sand. Shape, foam, rich, breath and sand. Rest and sign. Foam, forever foam and sand. Sand. Foam and sand. Sand and foam and 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 an rue reusetre ratinier utenfuje kishin wollen an hette. Hette alde keishokonin en het kojunik j en don zennekin j et tuli wegon yudin lesini koroi mashanon nutun UK tuli euro happen fifty Soruyutunuşun okun hetinceri, naşınışır wailing thick, rakın şıvrı, irişini fayrovi, egedagişimni, yurivişimni kuri, frigedad, iri frirur, aldakadegen, edikaşını ciddise, yuri wego liptior, yuri frui, irewin kuri, nesadabikoyge, wego, yuri squibe, yitir, wego, başaka, figi, figi, Figu!
There should have been a standing ovation.
Or as my wife would say, a standing ovulation.
So you were performing for a camera.
No,
Tell me about it.
no, I was performing for an unnumbered audience. The presence of human beings is even more crucial and more essential than their physical presence. You know, I could be performing. That's the difference between what I call podium poets, who need an audience, and poets of the line that I come from. We don't need an audience. There's always an audience.
I sensed you settling into that very quickly, and I thought, this is like a live performance.
Very much so. As a matter of fact, the camera, you know, and how sensitive he is to it, and the movement of it is part of the thing, the living structure of it. So the thing of a virtual audience, no. No, this is a real audience.
Yeah.
It's a real audience. The physical locality differs.
Talk about the locality, because you're in an
Yeah.
exhibition.
Exactly. See, we're in different places, but we're in the same space. That's the idea of splace. See, although we're all in different places right now, you're at home, you're here, you're actually we're all different spaces, but all in the same place. And that's there's a conjunction there where the two become confounded with each other, such as what I hope the best of this does, is to confound the spatial duality and totally ignore it.
You're better than that, at that than I am. Would you talk about performing in this exhibition space. This is the Utah Museum of Contemporary Art. And they've put on this extraordinary exhibition of your work called Baggage. And
Yeah.
I walked in yesterday and it felt like an explosion went on in my brain looking at these various pieces. You just performed in front of one of them that is my favorite. Let's talk about it in a few minutes, but what does it mean for you to walk into this exhibition space with your life?
I think it's the same thing that you felt. You see, because see, this is the thing, that you begin to understand something about yourself and others and how others understand you. In this whole process, you know, and so what I'm saying is that what you see here is a layer, is a dimension, you know, that affects me as much as it affects anyone else. See, that question, I think, would be better posed to the curators, to the ones who put it together. And basically, I deferred, right? With deference, the last word. That was very important as a mental exercise, as an ego exercise, you know, because most of us, I myself, I deal with my ego every day. And so for me, doing something like this is a great, great exercise in trying to understand myself and also in being privileged to see how others see you. You know, so I'm as delighted, you know, as you are. You know, I've had several explosions, as a matter of fact, of this thing all of a sudden making connections that I hadn't really made before because all of this stuff was in my basement in boxes and locked away, some of them for 30 years, some of them 40 years, you know, and so, you know, it was like, you know, so I'm walking into this like anyone else would. I don't think of myself as having a privileged position in all of this, you know, but I have a position of learning more, you know, of seeing my way clear to something further. It becomes easier to do, you know, things like that. You know, this thing is, for me, this is not just an exhibition. I don't even like the word, you know, because it's not an exhibition for me. You know, I think we talked this morning about over there, and it's not only a retrospect, it's an introspect.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? A retrospect, it is. But it's also in the process, for me, it's a great introspect. You know, and that's where, for me personally, the value of it is. And for somebody coming to this, I've seen it, I've heard it already 2-3 times, they're surprised. I thought he was a poet. You know, I mean, what is this guy doing with all of this? Where did that come from? How did he get from A to B? You see, all of those questions are questions that I'm actually asking myself, you know, and I can't really answer.
Let's talk about your performance art, because you're not a podium poet, as you said. You just performed for us. And if I think of that last piece you performed, Foam and Sand, the book that I showed as I introduced this sound text, reproduced your foam and sound text, which Evan Jones, by the way, who's doing our camera work and live stream work, he focused on your original manuscript of Foam and Sand. But you told me a story about Richard Kostelanetz and why he...
Yeah, the first time I met Richard, we were at a party and we were reading poems of each other, you know. And so he says, Alex, why don't you read a poem? And so I go, all right, you know, and Richard, after I read this poem, wanted to take a look at the score. And he saw the last page and he said, wait a minute, did you perform this? Is this something you can actually perform? And I said, yeah. He said, let me hear it again. Because it's in the again that you understand that it's not chaos. It's in the again. And so I did it again, and he said, you know, I'm putting together an anthology. I'd like to include that. And so he did. As a matter of fact, it was so nice when I went to his studio in '08, the last time I saw him 2 years ago. When I went to he's got this enormous library place, you know, and it was fun to go through, and all of a sudden I saw the scroll. He had hung it up. The sweetheart likes it. Enough to hang it up. This is the first version. You had the second version, and this one here is the third scroll. The third scroll that I've ever made. You know? And so that's that.
We have to point out that Richard Castellanets has produced a reprint of this book that you see behind us.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a book, although now it's a visual work of art in this space. Anyway, watch for notice. Soon you'll be able to order a copy of this.
Yeah, it's already available.
Oh,
Yeah, and on Amazon, you know, it's a reprint
right.
of the first limited edition, you know.
Of which I have a copy. Yes. You said yesterday something about this that I wanted you to say more about. So in my mind, it's always been a book that moves from page to page, or it's been a work of art with patterns of white and black. But you said yesterday that you discovered that some of these are performance pieces.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, there's at least 3-4 films here. This is a film, by the way. Continuing on to that, there's 2 films here, animated films, that if somebody wants to make them, they could do it. But there's 2 of them. One of them is here, and this is the end of it. It goes from there, starts out here with A, capital A, and it ends with small letter A. And it's a film going all there, and transmuting each way until there.
So if I flip the pages of my book, I would get
But they're in the same, exactly, if you flip it.
And how about a performance piece?
Oh, my God. My God. For instance, this one became a pattern for my daughter's wedding dress, all done in pearls. This pattern right here. Performance, and anyone is a performance. That's the thing that binds them, all of them. Al-Qadr, Al-Qalada, hold the ladder, all the letter, Al-Qalader, Al-Qaladir, Al-Qaladir, Al-Qal other O. Yeah, any of these can be performed. And there's my favorite one that I almost did it, is that one here. Meow, 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 said my cat as we sat together in the living room. Etc.
What do you mean, etc.? We want the whole thing.
I was going to do that, but I skipped it. And as I said before, the white parts were added almost like in a period of 10 years, 10, 12 years, trying to give people access. Because by themselves, now, in retrospect, you know, they make sense. Only after people have heard performances of them, people have seen the book, the physical book finished. But when I first showed it to several people, you know, it was like, I don't know what this is. And And these are the commentaries for each one. As a matter of fact, when I was finished with it, and I sent it out to David Meltzer, who had written an incredible book on Kabbalah, to Jerome Rothenberg, I sent one to him, and I sent one to Jackson McLowe, and I sent one to Castellanets. And they all wrote back to me saying that it made sense. Because mentally, and this is why that's why taking it to this other level is a step forward, blowing it up, performing the book, putting it into a mural. Because I was afraid mentally of slipping into a solipsism. When you become so self-referential, madness lies that way. When you become so self-referential that it only means to you, but nothing you say, after a while you speak and you don't know whether people are even understanding what you say, I was becoming solipsistic, and that was very frightening to me. And I needed to have some corroboration, that we take for granted. I take for granted right now that you speak English, that you're understanding pretty much what I'm saying. We take this for granted. I was in a state of mind where I wasn't taking it for granted anymore. And it was like, am I even hearing myself? Who's that speaking? What language is this? Even as I speak, what language am I speaking? What is that? It's kind of a weird glossolalia dyslexia, weird mental, I don't know what you.
Well, you need rattlesnakes.
Oh, rattlesnakes. Rattles will be helpful.
Richard Castellanets, in his Dictionary of the Avant-Garde, says that this is one of the great avant-garde works of the 20th century. In the film that we're going to talk about tomorrow with the two filmmakers, Lisa and Ossifer, there's a scene in the Bowery Poetry Club. They followed you in there, and you perform from a black book like the one you perform now.
Yeah.
And the woman who was running the show came up afterwards, and she wanted to see your score. And I'm hoping you'll show us a couple of scores. As he gets that out, she looked at the score and she says, well, that's not poetry. And then she said, all right, now to the main event, the raffle.
That is so funny. I'm so glad that they kept
It's a great scene.
Let me see. Let me show. This is anything that is visual for me is a score. Everything. Let me show you what I mean. There's a score. For instance, see there. That's a score from a film. That's the soundtrack to a film, Sand Cycles, that I did with Maida Withers and Bill Clough. That's the entire score. To the soundtrack, and I worked it out piece by piece, and yes, I can repeat it. Yes, I can repeat it. It is a score. It is a notation. It is a mnemonic device.
And that's Maida Withers, the dancer, and she danced out in the sand.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, if you look at Sand Cycles, there's a copy of it in the collaboration in
our website.
In the website.
Yeah.
But for me, I can't picture something that is not really a score. But let me show you.
As you're finding one, I was wondering if so you say individual words and make individual sounds, and I'm wondering how close you follow the exact notation, or if, say, the meow one that you just did, you might say meow 10 times, even though it's only written there once.
I don't take that much liberty.
Not that much.
See, the liberty that you take with it is very, very tenuous at times. Yeah, forget about this.
Okay.
Hold on. Follow me over there. Let me perform this for you. You could stay there and then zoom in. And if you could get as close as you can to this. In my mind, I'm in my mind. I mind my mind. Don't mind my mind. My mind, my mind. My mind is mine. My mind minds my mind. Man's mind is mine. Woman's mind is mine. My man's mind minds my woman's mind. She minds my mind in kind. Don't mind my mind. I don't mind. Mine is mine. I mind mine. Never mind. There's a lot of scores here. There's a lot of scores.
You once performed a sweater that I was wearing.
I could perform sweaters, after dinner dishes. When you want me to perform, invite me to dinner. I'll perform the after dinner dishes. It has worked a couple of times.
Let's talk a little bit about that space that you work in between the Sicilian language and the English language. Several of the things you performed today, School in the Spirit, for instance, several of them.
That was a memory of an early trauma, that actually happened to me as an immigrant, and not knowing English. And I was being punished, and to this day, it really haunts me. And this is what happened. I was visiting my friend, whose name I shall not mention, and I walked into his house. We were that friendly, I didn't have to knock. Walked into his house, and he was sitting there with his son, saying, "Hold out your hand." And he started hitting his hand. And even as I'm saying, my hair is growing, it's on edge. I went outside, back to my car, and I started to weep. Because, and I wrote the whole thing right there. I wrote the whole piece that I did, Schooling the Spirit, right in the car. I had forgotten it, you understand? I had forgotten it, and seeing it, the words, the key words, it was like opening up a code. Hold out your hand. It was like and so,
those traumas come for any immigrant or immigrant.
oh, I'm sure they do.
But there are also remarkable moments. Why don't you tell that story about when you discovered your native language in the bookstore?
Oh, yeah, I had been speaking my native language, and this is part of that alphabet, that one that I read. You speak differently when you're listening than when you're talking. And I was getting, this is about 1965, 67, I was trying to get into Italian poetry. And I was in Rizzoli on Fifth Avenue. It was a wonderful bookstore, Rizzoli on Fifth Avenue, New York. And I was getting some poetry. I was starting to read, trying to brush up my Italian, And then I noticed that the name of one of the books in that section of poetry, and I said, I mouthed the words. I go, this is not Italian. What is it doing here? Well, what is it? I picked it up and I tried to, La Pedrinova. Wait a minute. I say that. And I picked it up and I was having problems reading it. And I was illiterate. That's the day I found out that I was illiterate. I had been speaking a language that was never written. There was no books. And I discovered there was a million books. I discovered that I had a history going back to the 10th century. Eventually, I even wrote an entire grammar of it because there was so few information on it. And so about 5 years later, I was going to Italy, Sicily to be exact. My mother used to get really homesick, and we used to go for a summer. I was 11 years old. And then we went again, and I looked up the author of that book, Ignazio Bottita. And I wrote him a letter. I'm coming to Italy. I'm going to be in Sicily. You are my father because I read your book, La Pedrinova, with skin renewed. And I discovered my language. I've been reading, looking for Sicilian things, etc. And he wrote me back and he said, come over. And I went down there and I took a train because he's on the other side of the island, outside of Palermo in a little fishing village. And I walked out into the village, walking down from the train station, and I saw guys following me, and it's a very, very close kind of knit community, and I'm all of a sudden I become a stranger. I'm American. My clothing, whatever it was, and then I did the unthinkable, which I'm ignorant. I stop a woman. You never do that. Stop a woman you don't know to ask for directions. You don't do that. That's dangerous. So I stopped this woman. Do you know where Don Ignacio lives? Welcome. Come here. Come sit down. You look like you've traveled a long time. We'll let you know where he lives. But first, come sit down a little bit. The guys came over, All I had to do was say 2 words in Sicilian. And they knew I was not a stranger. We had a beautiful little refreshments. And they took me up to see the old poet, the old bard, a tradition going back to Homer. And I walk into his place, and I hear from the other room, "Is that you?" And I said, "Yes." He says, "Why don't you sit down, eat, have some wine, and then wake me up?" So I sat down, and having this wonderful wine, my God, it was like water. And it was like an LSD trip. It was wine that you could drink like water. It was so smooth. It was so like water. But you're getting stoned and you don't even know. I said, "This is dangerous." And I ate, and I woke him up. I said, "Did you have enough?" He says, "Yeah, let's talk." And we did. Later on, I just got married, and he came over to America, and we hung out together. And he would have magical things. We'd be in the subway, you know, and he says, "You see that guy over there? He's from Militedo. That's a town." He says, "Do you know him?" He says, "I've never seen this guy in my life." "Well, how do you know that he's from this particular town?" Look at the way he's standing. Now watch what he does with his hand. Look at the way he pushes back his hair. Look at that. Now watch the way he's looking out to the train. Look at it. And I said, "You're telling me that you know this, where he comes from, by the way he stands and the way his gait is, etc." He says, "Let's go over and ask him." So I said, "Excuse me, I'm going to ask you a weird question. Forgive me. Are you from Militedo?" He says, "Yes." He would do things like that. He was like a Dr. Doolittle. He could tell you in 2 minutes, seriously, where you came from and where your parents were from. That's how well he knew all the dialects and all the inflections of the language. And he often said, because it's a dying language, he says, "You know, I got treasure, I got money, and nowhere to spend it." Because the dying of the language is one of the saddest things you can possibly experience, an endangered language.
Our time is up, but would you tell our viewers goodbye in some way in Sicilian, so the language is held in this place?
Mono con mono non incontriamo mai, ma mono, lo stesso mono, sempre ne incontriamo. Roughly translated. People that come from different worlds and different planets will never meet. But people who are from the same world will constantly meet. And so we're in the same world.
Thank you very much.
And thank you.